After that whole Coyote pass, I want to set him free.
How are you going to do that?
I go and apologize. This is my journey. My hope is for them to receive it well. I just wanted to come and say that I apologize.
Wow.
I apologize, here's the huge one, for saying I didn't love you.
The narrative starts with a video of Kody Brown talking passionately about his position as a father that went viral on social media. Kody claims in the video that he has communicated with each and every one of his kids. He claims that if people are not answering, it is not his fault but rather their inability to respond in kind. He portrays himself as the one putting up the effort while his children, in his telling, are excluding him. His comments have the tone of a man attempting to regain control of a story. The video touched someone. It was another instance of Kody portraying himself as the victim of alienation to the audience, but it was much more intimate for his kids. The assertion that he was actively seeking them out and making every effort to repair strained relationships was more than just a declaration. It was a challenge to their everyday existence. Alright guys, buckle up because this one is heavy. Sister Wives star Kody Brown is once again under fire, but this time it's not coming from fans, critics, or even the media. It's coming straight from his own child, Leon Brown. And let me tell you, the words Leon used are brutal. They're calling their father a liar, a joke of a dad, and they're not holding back. So let's break down exactly what happened, what Kody said, and why Leon's response is shaking the Sister Wives fandom to its core. It became evident when the video went viral that this was more than a typical instance of drama on reality TV. It served as the catalyst for a more intense and agonizing conflict between Kody and his family. And for one of his kids, Leon Brown, it was the point at which they were unable to remain silent. In the most recent Sister Wives episode, Kody Brown sat in front of the cameras with a determined expression on his face and spoke as if he were a parent battling against uncontrollable forces. He insisted that the quiet between his children was not his fault and assured viewers that he had contacted each of them. He claimed that since the kids were refusing to reciprocate, he had no choice but to accept their rejection. He spoke in a tone that was both self-justifying and frustrated. He wanted others to think that he was the one trying, that he was the father reaching out, and that the kids were the ones ignoring him. This demonstrated to Kody that he was making an effort and that he wasn't the antagonist in the tale of his broken family. However, the weight of estrangement lingered heavily behind the slick delivery. Even though his children's quiet conveyed a different picture, his words were a plea to change the narrative and persuade the public that he was the caring father. They weren't just a statement for the cameras. Kody Brown spread his message outside of the Sister Wives cameras and into the globe shortly after he said it on the show. He repeated the assertion that he was trying feverishly to mend connections with his children when he sat down for an interview with Fox 5 in New York. He stated that the distance between him and his children was a result of other people's influence rather than his own conduct in a forceful, even protective tone. Kody shifted the blame again in that studio. Pointing to his ex-wives, he said that they were to blame for the distance. As a result, he said, the youngsters were listening to their mothers, taking in their viewpoints, and moving away from him. The story portrayed him as the parent who yearned for connection but was turned down, and it placed the blame completely on the ladies he had previously lived with. The interview was significant since it was a national stage rather than simply reality TV. Kody's remarks were heard by viewers who might not be familiar with the entire plot, in addition to show enthusiasts. However, the message seemed insincere to those closest to him. The assertion that he was reaching out and being disregarded was seen by his kids as an attempt to manipulate reality rather than a reflection of it. Kody Brown's words were more acerbic than before when he sat down for the Decider podcast. In addition to his kids, he talked about the journalists, podcasters, and pundits that covered him and analyzed every word he said. He believed that they were the ones influencing his kids' beliefs and using his words as weapons to turn his family against him. He maintained that the way others chose to repeat his words was insulting, not what he said. He asserted that his children were being impacted by others rather than by his own deeds and warned that the way his life was reported in the media had repercussions. It was a demand to control the narrative, a warning to those who spoke about him, and a plea laced with accusations. However, the message was meaningless to those who knew him the best. His children were responding to his words straight from his mouth and to his treatment of them when the cameras were not there, not to headlines or opinion. Kody attempted to place the responsibility elsewhere in the podcast, despite the fact that his family was becoming more and more divided. The video of Kody Brown's allegations had been making the rounds for weeks, sparking discussions among both admirers and detractors. But the tale didn't take a dramatic and unavoidable turn until Leon Brown, his child with Mary, came forward. Leon shared a comment on social media that broke through the clutter with unvarnished honesty and suffering. They said that their father's video was ridiculous, and they stated unequivocally that Kody had not contacted them in any way. Leon disclosed that they had not heard from their brother Garrison since his passing. In addition to being neglect, the silence was exacerbated by the recollection of the burial, where Leon claimed Kody openly disregarded them, making them feel disregarded during an excruciatingly painful time. Leon did not sugarcoat the facts in their post. Kody was accused of lying. He was referred to as a joke of a father. The meticulously crafted persona Kody had been projecting in interviews and on TV started to fall apart with those comments. As a child speaking about their own father, Leon's speech was unvarnished by media or commentary and was laden with the weight of personal experience. The delicate illusion of Kody's story started to crumble as the quiet was broken. Despite their differences, the family should have been together on the day of Garrison's funeral as a time of sadness. Rather, it exacerbated the already brittle relationship between Kody Brown and his kids. Leon had painfully clear memories of that day. They experienced the sting of rejection in the depths of grief, when every gesture and word mattered. In contrast to what a bereaved child might expect, their father, Kody, did not soothe them, reach out, or even acknowledge them. To put it simply, Leon blew them off. For Leon, the incident was more than just a case of carelessness. It was a wound that made them more silent. In the days that followed, the lack of communication became indisputable evidence that Kody's public assertions of outreach were untrue. Rather than serving as a space for healing, the funeral served as the impetus for a sense of irrevocable separation. There were murmurs of disappointment among the siblings. Kody and Robin's actions throughout the service were perceived by some as aloof, uncaring, and disconnected from the seriousness of the loss. It was the tipping moment for Mykelti, the reason she decided to sever all connections. For Leon, it was the moment that validated their pre-existing sense that their father's televised remarks did not correspond with his real-life behavior when the cameras were away. There was more to the funeral than merely bidding Garrison farewell. It came to represent the disintegration of a family, where betrayal and anguish clashed, and where Kody's public statements were overshadowed by quiet. Mykelti Brown found herself thinking back on what had happened in the days after Garrison's funeral. In addition to saying goodbye to her brother, the service marked a sea change in her relationship with her father. She had kept a close eye out, hoping for some act of kindness that would demonstrate Kody's readiness to support his kids during their time of sorrow. Rather, she was shaken by what she witnessed. Later, Mykelti acknowledged that Kody had contacted her a couple times, but she had declined his messages. The stillness wasn't the result of apathy. Rather, it was a line she felt obliged to draw. She could no longer deny the aspect of Robin and her father that the funeral had exposed to her. Their aloof and uncaring actions that day served as the impetus for her choice to sever ties. The decision was unpleasant but important for Mykelti. She realized that the reality she faced did not align with her father's outward statements about mending relationships. The truth was only made more apparent by the sadness of losing Garrison, and there was an excessive gap between his words and actions. She knew deep down that she was incapable of interacting with him anymore. One chapter of her life had been closed by the funeral, but another had begun, one characterized by silence, isolation, and the determination to shield herself from the hurt of unfulfilled expectations. Following Garrison's passing, Kody Brown's children's voices carried a collective burden of grief and rage. For a lot of them, the hurt stemmed from how their brother had been treated throughout his life, not just from losing him. They recalled the incidents in which Garrison and Gabriel were singled out, held accountable for the breakdown of their father's marriage to Janelle, and portrayed as the cause of animosity within the family. Those moments were not merely scenes from a reality show that were reenacted for the world to witness on television. Long after the cameras had stopped filming, the scars remained, reminders of guilt and rejection. Some of the siblings thought that Kody's continuous criticism and the way he talked about Garrison had caused him to become even more depressed. This conviction that their father's treatment had contributed to Garrison's difficulties was something the kids carried with them. Scars were left by both the public humiliation and the private quiet, the lack of affection and support. They both thought that there was no denying the link between Garrison's suffering and Kody's conduct. They carried the weight of that loss together, bound by a common sense of betrayal as well as sadness. Their collective suffering turned into a subdued revolt, a rejection of the story their father kept telling them. For them, the reality was unmistakable. Words spoken on a screen could not undo the harm that had been done. Janelle Brown spoke with a mother's pain exposed in the quiet aftermath of Garrison's death. Her remarks, which revealed the hardships her son had endured in the months leading up to his death, were heavy with grief and helplessness. She clarified that Garrison had started drinking to ease the agony that was pressing down on him rather than out of carelessness. He tried to put an end to the thoughts that troubled him and the rejection that seemed to weigh more and more on a daily basis. Janelle revealed that the cause of his hopelessness was obvious and clearly related to his father's distance from him. She had witnessed him struggle with the pain of being held accountable and portrayed as the root of family strife, and she had witnessed how those injuries worsened when the cameras stopped filming. No amount of distraction could heal the scars caused by the rejection, which was both personal and public. Her admission was intended to reveal the reality of her son's suffering rather than to level accusations. She spoke with the anguish of a mother who had watched her kid suffer and had attempted to help him but was unable to protect him from the hurt caused by a father's absence. It was a tale of love and grief, of a mother who would always remember her son's struggle, and of a boy who carried too much. Kody Brown spoke persuasively on television, portraying himself as a father who is committed to repairing damaged relationships. His words were calm, his tone rehearsed, as he told audiences that he was reaching out, that he was doing everything in his power to heal the harm. Viewers saw it as a picture of a father who would not give up, a man defending his family. However, the reality was very different away from the cameras. When they most needed him, his kids sensed the quiet, the lack of calls, and his absence. For many, the assurances he gave during interviews were meaningless, a public show. Their personal lives lacked the warmth he professed to provide. The difference was startling. Kody played the parent who made an attempt on screen. He was the father who was absent from the film. The disparity between his public narrative and his private acts grew larger with each passing day, leading his children to wonder if the man they saw on television was the same man they knew in their life. The answer was obvious in their hearts. The parent they encountered in real life was not the one who spoke to the world with such assurance. More than any interview or episode, the truth widened the gap that words couldn't heal. Kody Brown's statements became more public as the strain in his family increased. He started blaming others in appearances and interviews, transferring accountability from himself to those around him. He claimed that the children had been poisoned against him by his ex-wives. He maintained that the alienation resulted from the impact of moms who, according to him, carried and passed down bitterness rather than from his own conduct. The culpability did not stop there. Speaking about journalists and podcasters, Kody charged that they were misrepresenting his views and influencing his kids' perceptions. He claimed that the coverage of his life was more harmful than the statements he had made. He believed that outsiders were in charge of the story and that he was the one being misrepresented. But it was a different story for his kids. They did not believe that headlines or opinion could control them. They believed that they were responding to the truth of their father's actions, which included his rejection, criticism, and silence during their most vulnerable moments. The blame game served as an additional barrier between them and a reminder of Kody's reluctance to examine himself. His remarks ultimately served to widen the gap. As their father continued to cast shadows over everyone but himself, his children were forced to bear the truth of their own experiences as each charge drove them more away. For many of Kody Brown's children, the most effective reaction in the months following Garrison's death was to remain silent. They refrained from releasing remarks, engaging in public arguments with their father, and making an effort to refute his interviews. They decided to keep their distance instead. They deliberately chose not to talk to him in order to save themselves from more suffering, not out of indifference. The stillness was something Kody attempted to justify. He informed the crowd that he had made contact and was awaiting a response from his kids. However, the children saw the silence as a limit rather than a sign of inaction. It was their way of expressing that his words no longer reflected their reality and that the promises he made in front of the cameras failed to mend the wounds they had left behind. The lack of dialogue grew more loud than any argument. Disappointment and betrayal weighed heavily on every missed phone and disregarded message. It was a subdued uprising, a refusal to take part in a story they had lost faith in. And in that quiet, the truth of their alienation was laid bare. The tie between father and children had been severed, and no amount of public announcements could heal it. In addition to leaving a void in his siblings' hearts, Garrison's passing destroyed the brittle bonds that still bound the family together. The gap between Kody Brown and his kids deepened over the next few weeks, seeming like it would never be healed. Visits and conversations came to an end, and the silence hung over homes like an impenetrable wall. Reconciliation no longer appeared conceivable to several of the kids. Scars too deep to heal had been left by the years of criticism that had transpired both personally and publicly, the agony of witnessing their father brush off their sorrow, and the recollection of his aloofness during the funeral. They no longer viewed him as someone they could rely on, but rather as someone whose presence was more detrimental than consoling. It was a visual breach, not just an emotional one. There were now vacant spots where the family had formerly gathered for special occasions, holidays, and moments spent together, with siblings choosing to keep their distance rather than run the risk of getting injured again. Thread by thread, the ties that had once bound them together as a family were coming undone until nothing was left. The children grieved together, but separately from their father, in the shadow of Garrison's absence. And during that time of separation, it became evident that the family they had previously been could not be rebuilt as long as the wounds went untreated and Kody persisted in telling a false narrative. Leon's words resonated throughout the family and beyond, not getting lost in the clamor of social media. Their statements were strong, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. He is a liar. He is a ridiculous father. It was more than simply an accusation. It was a statement that highlighted the discrepancy between Kody's public assertions and his children's private lives. The weight of Leon's post resonated with the siblings' own emotions. As they watched their father swear he was reaching out while they felt nothing but stillness, it gave expression to the sorrow many of them had been holding inside. Leon's courage to speak up became a reflection of their common experience, a reminder that they were not alone in their disappointment. Fans and the media both soon took up on the remarks, but their impact came from the reality they conveyed rather than from headlines. Leon had spoken from the heart, from the pain of losing a father when it counted most, from the fresh scar of being disregarded during his brother's funeral. And in that candor, the facade Kody had attempted to keep started to fall apart. Long after the post was published, Leon's voice continued to reverberate, serving as a reminder to everyone that the division was genuine and that the suffering could no longer be concealed by carefully chosen words or staged interviews. One fact remained after the storm of public declarations and the family's pain subsided: Kody Brown and his children's separation was more than simply a television plot. It was now ingrained in the calm, the distance, and the voices of those who were unable to remain silent, making it a lived reality. In interviews, Kody persisted in saying that he was trying to connect, that he wanted to spend more time with his kids, and that he was reaching out. The voices of his kids, however, sent a different message. Leon's revelation, McKelty's withdrawal, and the subtle refusal of others to engage revealed a rift that could not be repaired by planned words or shifting responsibility. The wider picture was clear. The family had been broken not by outsiders, not by comments, but by the acts and decisions of the man at its core. The children carried the burden of being turned away when they most needed their father, the memory of criticism, and the anguish of rejection. For them, the harm was inextricably linked to their life, influencing how they perceived him and made decisions about their future. Ultimately, Kody's attempts to steer the narrative were no longer the focus of the story. His children were speaking from their own experiences, recovering their reality, and refusing to have their voices ignored.